Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the peak-to-peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
The song that you are currently listening to is called The Rain. It was originally recorded in 1969 by the band Eighth Penny Matter, and it was remixed in 2016 by the band's lead singer and songwriter, Brent Warren. Brent will be screening a film that he made in the late 90s very soon at the Backdoor Theater. More details on that film coming up later in the podcast. For more information about Brent and his artistic efforts, be sure to head to his website at imagelust, that's IMAGELUST.com.
Top and begin to fall. And the rain will fall for years, bring back the memories of the long lost years. Gentle rain like a wind-blown dove, brings back the memories of the long lost love.
Hello there, everybody. My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast. Today's episode is a community event-centered episode. Unfortunately, I've gotten this out pretty close to the actual event, so this will end up being a last-minute shout-out. But I'm also very excited to share this particular story with all of our listeners. Before we get into today's interview, though, if you haven't subscribed to the Mountaineer yet, and you want to support local news from peak to peak, then be sure to head to the mtnear.com and click on the subscribe button in the top right corner of our homepage. From there, you'll get full access to our digital archives and scanned copies of our physical newspaper. And you can choose to send a physical subscription to your mailbox or to the mailbox of someone that you love. If you're interested in being involved in the podcast or in the newspaper in any way, shape, or form, be sure to email our editor-in-chief, Barbara Hart, at info@themountaineer.com, myself at media@themountaineer.com, and or frontdesk@themountaineer.com to ask any questions you have. If you're interested in getting advertising into the newspaper and or the podcast, be sure to email frontdesk@themountaineer.com or head to the mtnear.com/advertise to see what packages are available. And finally, our top story today, brought to you by Brittany Wagner.
Our top story today comes from Christopher Kelly. The Mines Part 1, Caribou and Cross, from 1870 to 1970. Just 4 miles above Nederland, among the still visible foundations of Caribou, the ill-fated township that spawned Nederland, lies the area's namesake, the Caribou and Cross Mines. This site has a long, storied history that continues today, with the mines being in operation as recently as just over 6 years ago. In 1869, these three gentlemen locate this silver deposit up near Caribou. They try to keep it a secret for the first year, but word gets out. Donald Maloney said in an interview with The Mountaineer. Maloney is a geologist who works with Boulder County Parks and Open Space in their Education and Outreach Department in the Cultural History Program. Maloney not only manages the Nederland Mining Museum, he has first-hand experience with the subject matter, having worked at the Cash Mine in Gold Hill 19 years ago. You can read the full story in this week's Mountaineer or at themountaineer.com.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for bringing us our top story. If you're interested in hearing the full article written by Christopher Kelly, be sure to check out our previous 2 audio library segments, where author Christopher Kelly reads part 1 and 2 of his Mine History article series. And be sure to stay tuned for part 3 coming very soon. All right, now let's get into today's episode. Our guest this time around, do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
My name is Brent Warren, and I live in Nederland, Colorado, or just outside of Nederland. I've been up here for almost 50 years.
And as I mentioned earlier, I'm cutting this promotion a little close, but you will be hosting a screening of a film that you made very, very soon.
That is correct. It's called Marvin's Flying Boat. And I'll be happy to give you all the details. What would you like to know about it?
Well, I'll start with the origins of this film. What's it about, and what inspired you to make it?
It's a start. Well, the movie was premiered in 2000, the year 2000, and this was after almost 3 years of work putting it together. And it came out of a dual love, you might say. Marvin Lewis ran a restaurant with his wife in Nederland. It was called Marvins Gardens. It's now the Kathmandu restaurant. And he and I shared a similar love for a giant airplane, Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose. Very fascinating story, and a beautiful giant airplane, which when it was made by him was the largest plane in the world at that time. And the whole story behind what went into him making that plane, flying it once, and then putting it into storage for the rest of its life. Marvin loved the plane as much as I did, and he started building a 12-foot wanting to be flying model of that plane in his restaurant, in the middle of his restaurant. And I used to go in and look at it, but I never really talked to him because maybe he just never was around. I never got a chance to talk to him, but admired the plane. And then, well, I should say that I actually went out maybe 2 or 3 times to Long Beach, California to see the actual plane, where it was stored in a beautiful dome next to the Queen Mary there in Long Beach. So the story moving onward, Marvin sold the restaurant eventually, moved to Nebraska, taking the model with him, and there he lived until he passed away. Now, around the same time, I, for fun, joined the Boulder Aero Modeling Club to learn how to build small model planes and fly them. They have a little airfield down there by the Boulder Reservoir. And some of the people, when they heard I was from Nederland, said, "Whatever happened to Marvin's model?" And I told them, well, it's in Nebraska. Long story short, or maybe even longer, they made a deal with the family, the Lewis family, and they went to Nebraska, brought back all pieces of the plane, and then over almost a year, a handful of about 8 to 10 old guys from different fields built that model. They finished it. They improved on it, and they finished Marvin's model in the basement of a fellow named Steve Croft, who was a pilot for United Airlines. And so suddenly, I had just invested in one of the first nonlinear editing systems. And I won't even tell you what that cost at that time back in 1999. But I suddenly went, ooh, this could be a good story. 3 obsessions. The original Howard Hughes and his obsession to build the world's largest plane. Marvin's obsession to honor Howard Hughes with a model of the plane. And then this Aero Modeling Club obsession with let's finish that model, which they did. And I said, this is a great 3-part subject. Let's start filming it and making a documentary. And that's what I did over the course of that year. With the help of a young lady who was my assistant, we went in and we photographed 15 hours of them working on that model. And then they had 1 day to take it over to the Boulder Reservoir and attempt to fly it. And with a little bit of Marvin's ashes in it and 2,500 people showing up on the shore, that went into what became the ending of Marvin's Flying Boat. Will it fly? And of course, you have to come see the film if you want to get the answer.
So with over 15 hours of footage from the building of this model, how did you decide which footage would go into the final product and in what order it would go in?
Well, that's a good question, and that's called editing. And a lot of other films have a lot more hours put into it. But for a documentary, it's not scripted. So you shoot a lot of scenes, and then it's a question of, okay, what works and what doesn't work. So I like to tell people that this was a puzzle, and I love puzzles. And the puzzle was, okay, how do I put this film together? And I said, okay, we start with Howard Hughes and his plane. And then we morph into Marvin and his love. And then, of course, we finish with this grand finale of them doing the flight at the end. So you have all these things that you filmed. I went and filmed a lot of interviews with Marvin's family, his wife and his daughters and sons and one of the nieces, and they all told different bits of the story. And I'm going, well, that's great. Definitely can use that. Now, I like to say there was these little miracles that popped in that didn't know was going to happen, but they were so important to get. And I'll give you an example. I thought the beginning of the film would be just still pictures of Howard Hughes's airplane. But negotiating with a man in New York City, there is the actual footage of the actual flight. And he was able to find me one version of it that was in a public domain. And I was able to get it for very cheaply. Otherwise, I would have had to pay thousands of dollars to get it. Bingo! I now had the original flight, which you'll see at the very beginning of the film. And then, okay, what do we do with Marvin? Well, we had a bunch of still pictures of Marvin, which are in the film. That gets kind of boring after a while. And then suddenly the family said, oh, here's some home movies. Here's some home movies of Marvin that shows him in a different light. And then, miracle of miracles, they said, oh, we found a home movie of it in pieces in the garage in Nebraska before they brought it back. And I went, oh, perfect. Wow, that adds to the puzzle. And then the coup d'etat was the fact that Marvin was friends with one of the men who was on the actual plane, and they kept in touch all those years. And that man called Marvin and said, they're moving the airplane from Long Beach to McMinnville, Oregon, to a new air museum. But before they move it, do you want to come out and tour the plane? And so the family called me and said, we have home movies of Marvin on the real plane, sitting in the cockpit. And you can imagine his face, how delighted. What? And if that wasn't a miracle to get that. So that added another one to the puzzle of making this film. And then finally, it was how do I shoot the final event with 2,500 people and all that. And it's just with me with one camera until the day before, two friends called and said, we have the same cameras. We're coming to help you. So miracle. It became a 3-camera shoot, which meant one person could remain on family, another on flying the plane, and the other one wandering the crowd. Perfect miracle, because up to that point, it was just going to be, okay, how do we make an exciting film with just some still pictures and all that? It all came together, and then, of course, my job was then to pick this scene and this scene and this scene, and we also produced original music with the help of a lady, Rebecca Martin, came up and helped me put original music on this film, and I am so proud of it. To this day, I'm proud of it. So that's sort of how you edit the film down. So from 15 hours, it's now a 1-hour film. A little less than 1 hour. I cut it hoping to get it on like PBS or something. And so it's a whole nother story of what I've gone through to try to sell this thing. But that's almost a different story. So here we are.
So is this the first time in a long time that the movie has actually played in theaters?
Well, it's not seen a giant screen in 26 years. But I'll tell you the process. When I made this film back in 1998, guess what? I had a state-of-the-art prosumer camera. It was called a Canon XL1 that shot digital tape, but it wasn't high definition. So that was the state-of-the-art back then. And then the final movie was put on VHS. Remember VHS tape? And so I was selling copies of the tape. And then suddenly the tape became obsolete, and so I was able to then make copies of this film on DVDs, which was then sell through a company that did print on demand. That meant if somebody ordered a copy of the film, I would let this company know, and they would print a copy and send it off. Okay, and then that's how it stood for many years until YouTube finally said it's okay now to download or upload, long projects. At that point, I don't think you could do longer than 20 or 15 minutes or something. But suddenly, I was able to upload Marvin's Flying Boat to YouTube. And prior to this screening that's coming up, I was now letting people know you can watch it for free on YouTube. You can access it through my website, which I can tell you later, or you just go to YouTube and put in Marvin's Flying Boat, and boom, there's the hour-long film. Now, the last time it saw some big screens was when I premiered it, ironically, at the Backdoor Theater in 2000. We had a great turnout that day. I also showed it in Denver at the Boulder Public Library and a few other places. And not to sound egotistic, but I will be. Every showing, I got people cheering at the end and some standing ovations. So that just filled my heart with joy that I had really produced a perfect product that I wanted, to see that affect the audience in such a way that the story brought them to their feet. And so that was what I was hoping I'd be able to at least get it shown on more big screens over the years, but it wasn't to happen. And eventually I went on to other projects. So it's been kind of sitting in the shelf until now. I just thought it's time to let people know it's available on YouTube again. And then thanks to the Nederland area seniors, I thought, well, let's do a benefit for them. And that's what we're doing. And on September 18th, a Thursday, we will be showing it on the big screen. And I think it looks great. Oh, God, I can't tell you what it does to a filmmaker's heart to see their images large.
And is this the primary filmmaking venture you've gone into?
It's the big one. If you go to my website, you can go under video productions and you can see some films that I've made over the years. I mean, the last sort of big one is I did a 12-minute promo for the Carousel of Happiness back when Scott was looking for some place to build his carousel. So I put together a nice promo for him to try to sell his carousel. And bingo, Nederland bought it. So you can go to see that. It's on YouTube. And I did a few other short ones. I also have one that I did back in the 70s where a woman had done an interview with Alan Alda on the set of MASH out in Hollywood, where he is talking about his views on female right, female humanism, which is the name of the film. And she came to me and said, here's the audio. Can you make a film based on, I forget, a 15-minute talk? And that I did. But that was done on 16-millimeter film back in the days when you cut the film and you pasted it together strip by strip to create a final film. And this is a whole other miracle story of how that came together. I'll save that for another time. But that one and the Carousel and then now Marvin's were my three big attempts at filmmaking, because I'm a cinemaphile. I love movies. I love cinema. And if another project comes along that I think is worthy, I might devote another 3 years to make a film. But right now, it's just trying to get people to come out and partake in what I think is a really good story, and also to help the Nederland area seniors with a little bit of donation. The movie is free to come see. And then we're going to just say, if you got any kindness in your heart and you want to throw in a buck, we're asking for some donations, which would be appreciated to help the seniors.
And what do you hope people will take away from this film when they come to see it?
Well, the message of the film is joy, you might say, positiveness, because it's telling, I say the word obsessions because these people were obsessive in their love for either a project or a particular item, such as this wooden plane, or the love of the attempt to finish the dream. So it's all about, I'd like to say, love, even though the story of why Howard Hughes, what he went through to fly his plane is pretty tense. But that's the message. And that's why at one time I showed it at the elementary school, I showed it at the high school, because it's historic and it's positive. And the nice thing was the teacher said it held their attention. Wow. Unfortunately, I was hoping that every school in the United States would buy a copy for their library, but I ran into things that people go through in schools which allow them or don't allow them to buy things. But just the fact that it entertained kids of all ages, which I hope a bunch of them will turn out for this showing, because it's for everybody. So it's a story of love. How's that?
Was there anything else in general about the movie or the upcoming benefit that you want to add?
Well, that's a good question. I think we covered the basic rudiments of what went into it. And of course, I shake my head today how easy it is to make film, because back then done. It was quite a challenge to put it together and then, like I said, get VHS tape and to produce copies. And not everybody could afford a nonlinear editing system. Now today I shake my head where you can, on your computer for about $300, have a total editing system. You can produce Hollywood movies on it. And of course, for storage, I won't even tell you what I had to pay to get some extra storage to finish the film. And today you go down to some shop down in town and for $10 you can get a little flash stick with, 3 trigabytes on it, which would hold about 10 Marvin flying boats. So just the whole process of how technology has changed, and of course what we did back then to just invest and to do what was state of the art at the time. Now we see what's going on. It's so much easier, and that means there's so many more people making videos. And if you haven't noticed, if you go to YouTube or Instagram or whatever, a lot of images out there today, almost too many. But I like my film. I'm sticking with it, and please come and see it.
And see, I have to ask, because there is so much about Howard Hughes that you have clearly found fascinating over the years. I couldn't help but think of the phenomenal performance given by Leonardo DiCaprio when he portrayed Howard Hughes. So I have to ask, what did you think of the 2004 film, The Aviator?
Oh, The Aviator. You mean the Martin Scorsese film about Howard Hughes? Well, I thought he caught basically most of the essence of Howard Hughes in a 2-hour movie, which, if you read the books, he was much more complex than that. But it showed his obsession to make movies back in the 1920s, and then his love of aviation and him setting round-the-world flight records, and then, of course, the terrible accident where he crashed a plane, and then his dealings with the government and his rivalry with Pan American. That's what comes out of the film. His nemesis was Pan American. He started TWA. So to answer your question, I thought on the whole it was a pretty good film because it also showed him going into insanity, which he did toward the end of his life, maybe his whole life. But he became a recluse and it was really weird. It was a bit part of the whole story of Howard Hughes. So to answer your question, thank you, Martin Scorsese, for at least telling a pretty good, insightful story about this man. And plus, I thought that Kate Blanchett was wonderful portraying Katharine Hepburn. She did a great job there.
I know that doesn't really have much to do with this particular film, but I still wanted to ask it while I had you. And yeah, I think those are the big questions that I have on my end.
Okay, well, and then there's that little question, what is the meaning of life? But other than that, I think we covered the big question. Well, let me just say that the film will be showing the Backdoor Theater Thursday, September 18th. The film will start around 7 p.m., but we're shooting to have a meet and greet, maybe starting around 6 in the lounge right there, so that if people want to come in and chat and learn more or talk, we'll be there to greet people. So September 18th, 7 p.m.
I really appreciate you taking the time to jump onto this podcast and talk about your film, Brent.
Well, of course, you taking the time to help promote it. That's greatly appreciated. Yeah, and I hope at some point we can encourage other people to try to put puzzles together, and I'm sure that's basically what everybody's trying to do when they make a film, is they take a subject and they said, how do we make this interesting, and how do we do that with the puzzle pieces? And it's fun, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. For the most part, look at the great ones that did work or do work. I just rewatched Sunset Boulevard, and oh my gosh, what a great film that just will stand the test of time. All I can say is good luck. May the force be with you.
If you want to see Marvin's Flying Boat on the big screen for the first time in over 25 years, then be sure to head to the Backdoor Theater, located at 750 North Highway 72 in Nederland, on Thursday, September 18th, 2025, starting at 7 p.m. An additional opening reception will start at 6 p.m. Donations are optional to benefit the Nederland area seniors. Yes, that means that the event is less than 24 hours away from when I'm actually getting this episode out there. But since it's a free event to attend, I hope that more of you can make it. If you can't make the screening, though, and you still want to see the film, be sure to check out Brent Warren's YouTube channel, which you can find along with all of his other artistic efforts by going to his website, ImageLust, that's ImageLust.com. Oh, and if you want to learn even more about Brent, I've interviewed him previously to talk about his magician act, Doc Murdoch. So be sure to check out the local events spotlight uploaded on October 17th, 2024 to hear more from Brent. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Mountaineer Podcast. I'll be back very soon with another community-centered episode of the podcast. In the meantime, if you want to share this episode or others around with whoever you see fit, be sure to head to the mtnear.com and scroll near to the bottom of the homepage, or head to our podcast's main hub at the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com to see a full archive of all of our episodes. Again, if you're interested in being involved in the paper and or the podcast in any way, be sure to reach out to info@themountaineer.com, media@themountaineer.com, or front desk at themountaineer.com for any questions, and we can get something sorted for you. And finally, for all of our most important pages, be sure to check out individual episode descriptions of our podcast, or check out the very top of our homepage. I will see you guys next time for another episode of the Mountaineer Podcast. Have a great rest of your day!
Sitting on top, just trying to turn a mountain into the hill of a mole. Just can't remember all the people I was counting on. Kibby left late last spring to go below New Mexico. Lilac left to escape the heat, blisters of the coming cold. Sitting on top.
The song that you are currently listening to is called County Woman. It was written and performed by Brent Warren as part of a song series written and performed during the COVID-19 pandemic, Songs for the Mythicals. You can find this song and others on his YouTube channel, Brent Murdoch Warren Tunes, which you can find along with his other artistic ventures on his website at imagelust.com. Brent's film Marvin's Flying Boat will be shown at the Backdoor Theater, located at 750 North Highway 72 in Nederland on September 18th, 2025. An opening reception will start at 6 p.m., and the film will start at 7 p.m. Donations are optional to benefit the Nederland area seniors.
Sitting on top, thinking out loud, putting words on the sky. My heart song flutter will get to her somehow. County babe, she cans the beans, waits for the sun to come down. Tonight's the night her man comes courting, put on her silky evening gown. I'll saddle up my Buick, might take it to ride. I'm going to find a way to the other side, where the county woman, she got all the moves. If I wasn't with her, she'd show me what to do. And she gives me fiddles, she gives me pie, a little slice of lovin' on the side. I love her madly like a pretty love poem. I love her till those cows come home.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.